over 700,000 people die by suicide every year. That's one person every 45 seconds. For every person that dies by suicide, 135 people are personally affected by that death. That's 94.5 million people a year bereaved by suicide. That's more than double the population of Canada. But despite this, there is still a massive stigma around suicide and mental health. People think of mental health as something they have rather than something we all have. People find it hard to say when someone has died by suicide, or they use terms like committed suicide. But committed is a term associated with sin and crime. England and Wales decriminalised suicide in the 1960s, Ireland in the 90s, India in 2014. However, sadly, in some countries, suicide and attempted suicide remain a crime. We need to change how we think and talk about suicide and mental health. Also, when we talk about suicide, we often talk about people who are at risk. And yes, of course, some people are more at risk than others. But we have to remember that every community is affected by suicide, and not just those that are deemed to be at risk. Every single human being has mental health. I'm not saying we all have bad mental health, and I'm certainly not saying that we all have a mental illness. But just like we all have physical health, we also all have mental health. We know how to look after our physical health. We know we should eat healthy. We know we should exercise. We know we shouldn't smoke, we should drink in moderation, and we should eat at least 5 fruit or vegetables every day. But we're not always as good at knowing how to mind our mental health. So let me introduce to you the 5 ways to well-being. 5 little things you can do every day to mind your mental health. Connect. Be active. Take notice. Keep learning. And give. Number 1, connect. Human beings are social creatures. We need to interact with other human beings. I'm not saying we all need to sit around and talk about our feelings and talk about our mental health. I'm saying, though, that if you can, sit down with another human being. Have a cup of tea or a cup of coffee. Talk and connect. Number 2, be active. We all know that being active is really good for our physical health, but it's also really good for our mental health. Running, swimming, cycling, farming, gardening. It doesn't really matter what it is once it gets that heart beating that little bit quicker than it normally does. Number 3, take notice. There's 2 sides to it. Firstly, take notice of where you are. Take notice of what's around you. The sights, the smells, the sounds. Secondly, take notice of how you are. Take notice of what's going on for you. Are you angry, upset, annoyed? Take notice of that feeling. Acknowledge it. Number 4, keep learning. If being active is about keeping our bodies moving, then keep learning is about keeping our brains moving. Reading, writing, languages, musical instruments, crosswords. These are all really good ways to keep our brain active, to keep our brain learning, to keep connected with that learning experience. And number 5, give. Doing things for other people makes us feel a little bit better too. This doesn't always have to be a massive gesture. This can be something as simple as leaving a car out in traffic or holding the door open for the person behind you as you leave this room. Little things like that make us feel a little bit better, but also make that other person feel a little bit better too. Remember though, if you are going to take up a new activity, if you're going to try something new, find something you enjoy. There's no point deciding, oh, I'm going to go run a marathon if you hate running. Find something you like doing, because that way the chances of you keeping it up and keeping doing it are obviously greatly increased. And that's all I want. I want us all to look after ourselves a little better. I want us all to mind ourselves a little bit better. I want us all to do a little bit more for ourselves. And my hope is that if we do, we all might start to feel a little bit better. We might be a little bit happier. And maybe, if we all are a little bit happier, there might be less people with issues with their mental health, and maybe less people will die by suicide. Of course, though, no matter how healthy you eat and how active you are, we all get sick. And when we get sick, we go to a doctor. It is the exact same for our mental health. No matter how much of the 5 a day you practice and how much you look after yourself, we all have bad days where we feel upset, angry, or annoyed. When you have a day where you feel upset, angry, or annoyed, reach out. Reach out to someone you trust, connect with them, talk to them, and tell them how you're feeling. And if you need to, then seek that professional support. I've spoken about where we've come from with suicide and mental health and the stigma, and I've spoken about where I want us to go. I think we are going there. I think we are heading in that direction. I'm going to give an example. A few years ago, when my eldest son was 3 years old, his little brother was 1 at the time, so yeah, it was stressful in my house with 2 toddlers. And one day, my 3-year-old turned to me and said, "Take deep breaths, Daddy." I never taught him that. His mom never taught him that. His preschool taught him that. If our preschools are teaching our 3-year-olds that when they're angry, upset, or annoyed, that they need to step back from a situation and take deep breaths, then I do think we're doing something right, and I really do believe we are going in the right direction. Thank you very much.